Now I want to turn to the impeachment update for the day. And this is about Giuliani. So former mayor of New York City, Giuliani, now Trump attorney, Giuliani and Comey and Nunes, oh my. Okay, it didn't quite work with the lions and tigers and bears and all that, but kind of close. Anyway, I want to bring you just kind of a quick skim through of this is the update of where we are in impeachment. As I told you, the House voted last Thursday, Judiciary Committee voted, or Friday, I guess, articles of impeachment. There supposedly the full House is going to vote on them tomorrow. So we have all sorts of things coming out over the weekend. I want to start with what Giuliani came up with. So Mayor Giuliani, who is, of course, former mayor of New York City, now a Trump lawyer, and Giuliani, who's, he's a tough guy. He was a loved and beloved mayor of New York City and a very effective mayor. Went over to the Ukraine to meet with some officials there to understand what was going on in 2016 between the U.S. and the Ukraine and Burisma and other entities involved, the State Department and the Soros-funded Anti-Corruption League, or whatever it was called. Soros had a thing there too, Anti-Corruption Corporation, whatever it was. Point is, Soros is in the middle of it, creating chaos in Ukraine like he creates chaos in America and all over the world. And so Giuliani went over there and to talk to these people to try to say what was really happening. So Mayor Giuliani is back in America with information about, in his words, proof of massive corruption in the Ukraine involving the Bidens. And he's come back with documents, statements, information. He's putting something together that he wants to turn over to Attorney General Barr, for one thing, and also wants to turn it over, I believe, to the Senate, probably to the Senate, maybe to the House, various committees there. The point is, Mayor Giuliani dug in to figure out what was really happening, because all of this impeachment grew out of a conversation between President Trump and President Zelensky of the Ukraine. Essentially, President Trump was asking, did you ever get to the bottom of it, or can you get to the bottom of what was happening inside the Ukraine with all this corruption? Everyone involved in the call says there was no quid pro quo, there was no arm twisting, there was no money withheld, nobody even knew money was even slightly being delayed. I mean, there's no basis to even criticize Trump, let alone to bring impeachment hearings. But back to so Giuliani says, I got a lot of information here, and he wants to bring it forth. All of this being relevant to the question of why we are having an impeachment hearing at all, when what President Trump was trying to do was get to the bottom of actual corruption. What you see on the left is just a radical determination. They are not going to let the American people understand how corrupt Joe Biden is, because it wasn't just Joe Biden and it wasn't just Hunter Biden, but it is all sorts of very high-level people, high-level leftists in our government, State Department, and people in the Obama administration at least aware of, if not participating in this, much speculation, even people in the Senate, other people in the high levels of our country had not only knowledge of this, but possibly had gained from this, had been part of the corruption, had received some gain because of it. So Giuliani's back saying, I have a lot to tell you, and I'm going to tell you that I think it's a race to the finish. I think the House wants to get the impeachment vote done before Giuliani can release all this information. I mean, Giuliani did was release it by a series of tweets. I urge you to go to his Twitter. I don't even know what his Twitter handle is, Giuliani's, but you can find it. He's put all this information out, tweet by tweet by tweet by tweet. What he says, he's uncovered his terms, proof of extensive corruption in the Ukraine, including clear proof of money laundering by Burisma Energy Company and Hunter and Joseph Biden. So that's Giuliani. Okay, now I want to go on to Comey. Now, I got to tell you, folks, the idea that we still have, people have become funny nicknames for former FBI Director Comey, Parson Comey, Weasel Comey. But, we've all now, everyone paying attention, has read summaries of the IG report, the Inspector General report. We know the Inspector General found astonishing wrongdoing inside the FBI, changing, doctoring documents before they were submitted to FISA. That the FISA court, for example, pretty much relied entirely on the dossier, which had no validity to it. So I want to first play a clip. This is, and by the way, I meant to say, Matt, the extremely wonderful producer, is back. So glad he's here. And I sent, this is for Matt. This is Comey. This is former FBI Director Comey on the Chris Wallace show. And here he is.
Former FBI Director James Comey. Director, welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Thanks for having me.
You have been taking something of a victory lap since the IG report was released earlier this week. The question is whether or not it's justified. Here are you and the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, answering the same question.
Do you think this is vindication?
It is. I mean, the FBI's had to wait 2 years while the president and his followers lied about the institution. Finally, the truth gets told.
Does your report vindicate Mr. Comey?
It doesn't vindicate anyone at the FBI who touched this, including the leadership.
The IG says you should feel no vindication.
Well, maybe it turns upon how we understand the word. What I mean is that the FBI was accused of treason, of illegal spying, of tapping Mr. Trump's wires illegally, of opening an investigation without justification, of being a criminal conspiracy to defeat and then unseat a president. All of that was nonsense. I think it's really important that the Inspector General looked at that and that the American people, your viewers and all viewers, understand that's true. But he also found things that we were never accused of, which is real sloppiness. And that's concerning. As I've said all along, has to be focused on. If I were director, I'd be very concerned about it and diving into it.
Again, here is what you said about the FISA process and what the Inspector General Horowitz said this week. Take a look.
I have total confidence that the FISA process was followed and that the entire case was handled in a thoughtful, responsible way by DOJ and the FBI.
We identified significant inaccuracies and omissions in each of the 4 applications, 7 in the first application and a total of 17 by the final renewal application.
17 significant errors in the FISA process, and you say that it was handled in a thoughtful and appropriate way.
Yeah, he's right. I was wrong. I was overconfident in the procedures that the FBI and Justice had built over 20 years. I thought they were robust enough. It's incredibly hard to get a FISA. I was overconfident in those because he's right. There was real sloppiness. 17 things that either should have been in the applications or at least discussed and characterized differently. It was not acceptable. And so he's right. I was wrong.
Okay, let me jump in and say there. I'm going to just jump in. I've had enough of him. He's making me crazy. I want to say a couple of things about this. Number one, the IG did not, the Inspector General did not say the FBI was merely sloppy. The IG's report points out numerous instances in which evidence was changed, manipulated. That's not sloppiness. Sloppiness is I, forgot to put a comma. I didn't, dot the I and cross the T. It's not sloppiness. Now, the IG wouldn't go quite far enough to say this is intentional. He just said, I found no evidence of an intentional bias. And this is the point of contention, of course. I'm sure you realize that both the Attorney General Barr and Durham, the current U.S. attorney looking into this inside the DOJ, are saying, you know what? This is a bogus conclusion by the Inspector General, a bogus notion that somehow we can't, we can see all this wrongdoing. By the way, every single act of wrongdoing, everything that they found, Horowitz found, all of it trended against the president. It's kind of like watching a football game and the ref makes 25 bad calls in a row. And if they were, half for the home team and half for the visiting team, you say, well, okay, he's a bad ref. But when all the decisions go against the visiting team, yeah, you got a hometown ref. You know that's true in football. It's true in life. If every single decision made by this Inspector General, made inside the DOJ and the FBI that hurt the Trump team and helped his attackers, all the decisions hurt Trump. The idea that I still can't really see any bias, I don't see any bias, it's just absurd. Anyway, but back to what Comey had to say. Comey, he finally had to weasel. I can't stand listening to him. He finally said, okay, he was right, I was wrong. But 2 significant things I want to make clear about Comey before we get to one last thing, which is Nunes. And this is it about Comey. Comey still is trying to stand by the idea that the Steele dossier, the whole Hillary Clinton Democrat Party funded Steele dossier, Comey's trying to say, well, it didn't have that much to do with getting the FISA warrants. I mean, it was a piece of it. This is what he tried to say all along. He's still not admitting. It was the whole thing. It was the whole thing. It was, 99% of what that FISA court relied on was what was in the Steele dossier. Comey won't admit that. He's trying to pretend. So this is Comey insisting the FBI didn't really rely that much on the Steele dossier versus what the IG found, which is like, yes, it was. It was practically the whole thing. The FISA warrants got issued because of the Steele dossier. Point number two. Also, Comey will not acknowledge that the source, the very source everyone said was so wonderful, that was the source of the creator of the dossier, that somehow the Steele dossier, he is still trying to say was credible. In fact, Horowitz, the opposite of what Comey is saying, Horowitz said, no, actually, the dossier was essential to getting the warrant, and that the FBI's own fact-checking showed that Steele, the author of the Steele dossier, the Russian dossier, was not credible. Comey just won't deal with those facts. But final thing on this update and where we are, I mentioned, we could talk about this for hours and hours. I want to hit some key points of where we are. Last one is about Devin Nunes, who simply needs to get, I don't even know what medal would be good enough, the Medal of Freedom or something, for his bravery in dealing with the left wing in this country, dealing with their absurdity. First, I want to play there's Devin Nunes this is clip 3, Matt, very wonderful. Clip 3, this is Devin Nunes talking about really what happened with Horowitz and the Inspector General. So here's Devin Nunes.
Well, first off, we need to have a hearing with IG Horowitz next week. The longer that this goes on, the longer it takes America to heal itself. The FISA court itself is in tremendous jeopardy. We cannot support the FISA court right now. The judges are refusing to take action against these dirty cops and dirty lawyers who did this. That's totally unacceptable because, remember, this is a secret court. The people who, like Carter Page, they have no recourse except for Congress. This is why the House Intelligence Committee and Senate Intelligence Committee were created. So it's important, I think, to take people back. It wasn't that we just learned about this in February of 2018, Maria. We actually, House Republicans, learned about this in the spring of 2017, at least the initial part, that the dossier had been used, that the Clinton paid for dirt. We then proved that the Clintons did pay for it and the DNC did pay for it in the fall of 17. And we knew that we had to get this information out to the American public, and that's what led to us producing this memo in February of 2018 that the media helped cover up for it. And to get back to normalcy in this country, we need a free and fair press, but we don't have that today. We still have numerous members of the media, hundreds of them, who attack not only House Republicans for putting this out, but anyone else in the media who said, hey, maybe the Republicans might have a point here. Should we get to the bottom of it? And remember, we spent a year saying these documents need to be declassified, and that would have ended it there. But instead, what happened is that the Democrats lied, and now they've put the American people in tremendous danger. The judges on the FISA court are putting the American people in danger. Yeah. Because look, the American people, at the end of the day, we want our liberty before we're going to give up. We're not going to give up our liberty in order to have some secret court operate to spy on political campaigns and to use our counterintelligence capabilities to do that.
Okay, this guy, Devin Nunes, I want to again give him credit and say I'm going to be talking more about him in coming weeks. Devin Nunes has been a hero in this process from the beginning. He's a square shooter, kind of he is from California, but you wouldn't know it by his conservatism and clarity of thought. He is committed to finding truth. He is bravely speaking truth. When he put that memo out he was just describing in 2018, he was attacked by the left in this country, the leftists, especially by Schiff, just ridiculed and mocked and derided and accused of dishonesty. And so now that the Inspector General report came out and verified everything Devin Nunes said in his memo, and therefore made it clear that what Adam Schiff was saying to criticize Nunes, that Adam Schiff was at least completely 100% wrong, if not totally dishonest. So Nunes sent a letter to Schiff that essentially said, this is on Sunday morning, yesterday morning, Nunes sent a letter to Schiff just essentially saying, you're in need of rehabilitation. You need to rehabilitate your reputation, your integrity, because the entire impeachment process is really being run by Adam Schiff. Think about that. I mean, I don't use the name-calling terms people use for him, but the guy this is the guy who met with the alleged super-secret whistleblower, covered it up long as he could, pretended he didn't have that meeting, doesn't know anything about it, orchestrated the impeachment, and now he's in charge of it. And this is the guy who sits there after having mocked Nunes for telling the truth and gets an Inspector General report that points out Nunes was right and Schiff was wrong, and Schiff cannot come clean if his life depended on it. And that leads me to the last clip I want to play. This is actually clip 2, and this is the great congressman from the state of Texas, John Ratcliffe. Again, the Sunday talk shows were full of good things this weekend, but John Ratcliffe, again, and Maria Bartiromo, talking about how disastrous it is for the Democrats that Schiff is really kind of in charge of this impeachment. Here he is, John Ratcliffe.
Are expecting this impeachment vote to be on Wednesday. What are you expecting in the week ahead? And tell me about the reaction you've been seeing from that IG report.
Yeah, as you said, the vote will be on Wednesday, despite what a Democratic scholar called the fastest, thinnest, weakest impeachment in U.S. history. That's the direction that we're going. The real question is, how big will the jailbreak be by the Democrats? We've already seen one Democrat apparently switching parties over it, another saying he's going to vote against it. And so really the question is, how many more before Wednesday's vote? And the reason for that, Maria, is because the Democrats have made the mistake of staking the credibility of all this on Adam Schiff. The person that they put in charge of this investigation turns out is the one that helped start it by meeting with a person who walked out of Adam Schiff's office and became the whistleblower. And at the very same time that that's happening, as you mentioned, now there's an Inspector General report that comes out that says during the last impeachment hoax, the Trump-Russia one, Adam Schiff repeatedly made false statements to the American people about the FBI's actions. And so I think, that's what's happening, and that's why the Democrats have been rushing to keep this from unraveling and keep their folks in line, and they're having a really hard time to do that. I wouldn't want to bank my political future on Adam Schiff's credibility, but they've made that mistake.
I should say they made that mistake. Okay, I'm going to wrap up this segment about the there's so much more we could talk about impeachment, but I do want a quick story, but wrap up this segment on Giuliani, Comey, and Nunes by saying this. There is one Democrat, as you heard Congressman Ratcliffe allude to, one Democrat, member of the U.S. Congress, first-term Democrat, who's announced he is going to switch parties over this impeachment. I'm telling you, folks, this issue should not be Democrat versus Republican. This is the question. Like in a criminal trial, if you were a juror, the question is not what political party are you versus the accused, what race, ethnicity, or national origin are you versus the accused. The question is a rule of law. The question is actually applying the law to the facts and looking at the real evidence. When you are railroaded as a criminal defendant, that term means the jury's already decided they don't care what the facts are, they don't care what the evidence is, they're going to find you guilty. And this is what the Democrats cooked up in the U.S. House on this impeachment. That's what it is. So you have one Democrat now announcing he's going to flip parties. And also, for the first time, more and more polling comes out, but the top nationwide poll is finding that for the first time, more Americans oppose impeachment than support it. And the Democrats are now in a tough situation because they have sold this to their base that we're going to impeach him somehow. They've gotten this far down the road. They've gotten the Judiciary Committee to vote on articles of impeachment. The American people don't like it. And then they've got the Giuliani findings from his meeting over in the Ukraine looming in the background. That's going to come out. And they have the Attorney General Barr and U.S. Attorney Durham report sometime coming out. I guess now it's going to be next year. All of this is going to show that what the Democrats tried to impeach President Trump on, and they know he won't be removed in the Senate, what they tried to impeach him on is not only what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden have been up to in the Ukraine, but actually many other players at very high levels in Washington likely involved in this massive corruption uncovered by Giuliani. So this race to the finish to get the impeachment vote might be the worst decision the Democrats ever made. They make a lot of bad decisions, but this might be one of the worst ever.